Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, made it on time today, which is a record for me. Find it kind of a little odd sometimes that I don't start work until like noon or 1 p.m. But I still have trouble showing up on time, even that later in the day. So, okay, cool. So, give me a sec to set everything up, and then we'll rock and roll. I got some good notes today. I have my weekly drink. It is Saturday. Boom. Dr. Brew, great kombucha company, if anyone's interested. Michael, what is up? Hope everything's going well. We'll be covering low back training today. David, what is going on? David's in the house. David, we'll be covering low back training today. And Vince, what is up? Two of my favorite clients, Vince and David. How are you guys doing? We'll be talking about low back training today and how to optimize the resilience of the back, how to remain pain-free in the lower back, and then also how to develop the back aesthetically as well. So we'll tackle it from a couple of different vantage points. And you guys, if you guys have any questions at all, just let me know. Low back pain in particular is extremely common. Don't feel like you're one in a million if you do run into low back problems in your lifetime. Last time I checked, probably 85 to 90% of people have at least one episode of serious low back pain at least once in their life. So it's very common. And one of the most common injuries, actually, one of the most common orthopedic injuries is damage to that L5, S1 disc. So there are like 5 discs in the lower back area, and that very last disc before your pelvis begins. It's extremely common, and a lot of people injure that area, and unfortunately kind of remain in back pain for a large portion of their life. And oftentimes, in most cases, not every case, some cases are obviously extremely complicated, but in almost every case, at least from my observation, like 98% of cases, fairly easy to get people out of low back pain with just some good education and some good self-inquiry, etc., etc. So we'll go from there. And again, if you guys have any questions at all, just let me know, and then we'll rock and roll. So I got my notes here because I'm usually forgetting stuff as we cover this conversation. And you guys, just remember, everything is always dependent on the individual. So when listening to people online, even myself, just remember, I never met any of you guys. So this is so important. And unless you meet someone personally and know their individual circumstance, it's really tough to give any advice, whether it be financial advice, and especially health advice, something as complicated as mental and physical health, because you don't know that person's specific situation, their starting place, their level and willingness to change, level of ambivalence they're experiencing, etc., etc. And also their genetics, how many past injuries they may have had, and how those injuries kind of affected their low back currently, etc., etc. So inevitably, if you guys want the best service, you just have to really become your own mechanic and learn this stuff yourself. I'm going to recommend a bunch of books here today completely for free, and courses that I'm getting no kickbacks from whatsoever. So not even like a single penny. But if you guys want to become your own mechanic, you can. It's a tougher path. I would definitely recommend doing it, but if you're not going to, inevitably, your only solution really is just to seek out help and hire someone. That's good, and I'm going to kind of cover a couple of check marks or checklists that you guys can go through to determine if who you're hiring is a good match for you, okay? So today we'll be talking about how to basically develop a strong, resilient, and aesthetically appealing lower back. And I know this isn't like the most popular topic, but it's super important, especially if you kind of want to remain pain-free in your lower back. And I'm just going to kind of go down the list here and just keep the conversation very straightforward today. So the first thing you need to do is basically, Stefan, Kyle, LF, Felix, Daryl, what is going on, guys? So the first thing you need to do is really be crystal clear about your goals and objectives of training the lower back. Like, what are your goals? Is it more performance oriented? Is it more health oriented? Like, I just don't want to be in lower back pain. Is it more aesthetically oriented? And I'll cover what those can mean. So with aesthetics, a lot of times there are two things to consider here. Most of the time people are like, I want an aesthetically appealing back and I want to kind of get rid of my love handles and stuff of that sort. So in that case, if you feel like your back isn't as aesthetically appealing as you would like or not looking the way you would like, simply because of kind of like the shape of your love handles and stuff of that sort, then it really doesn't have that much to do with training in that case. You just need to really lower your body fat by quite a bit more. So if you have like unwanted love handles and you're male, start with probably initially getting your body fat down to 10 to 12% range and see how it looks from there. Some people may need to go a little bit lower. For some people, it may be gone by the time they hit maybe 12%. Usually around the 15% mark, the love handles become far more pronounced. So just know if you're having issues with that, that's just basically 100% lifestyle and nutrition oriented, mainly nutrition oriented. And I've done a myriad of videos on this topic already, so feel free to check any of them out. If you like, just kind of comment in the section and I could link it to you after the live so you don't have to scroll through a bunch of lives I've done. I think I'm up to like 130 at this point. So love handles, 100% diet with supplementary of lifestyle choices. It really doesn't have anything to do with what type of exercises you're doing or what type of training program you're on. Now, having said that, once your body fat gets down to a decent range, let's say 10 or 12%, which is a very good range for males, and you could always get, if you're not sure about your body fat percentage, you could always just get a thing called a DEXA scan if you want it to be very, very accurate. Another thing you can do is just do a mirror check, and if you have, like for example, visible lower chest fat, or maybe let's say like 2 inches of belly fat in the front of your midsection, most likely you're hovering around 20% or something near there, and you would need to basically half your body fat percentage and get it down to about 10 to 12%. And then the love handles would be very, very flat at that point. So once you get your body fat down quite a bit, another thing you can do to really accentuate the aesthetics of your lower back and kind of develop what a lot of people refer to as that kind of Christmas tree shape, especially with the deep striations. You can see kind of the lines going down parallel to the spine on each side, for example. That you could do a bunch of workouts for, and weight resisting workouts would help you with that. And we're going to cover which exercises to do for that towards the end of the live today as well. So that would be more training oriented. But if you have love handles, because a lot of people say, I want my lower back to look better, but when I ask them what that means, they mainly say, I just don't want this kind of bunch of excess body fat on the love handle area. And then I would tell them, like, you just need to basically just decrease your body fat percentage. And that is really the goal. I guarantee you, if you get down to about 10%-ish, it should be extremely flat at that point. For most people, it should be completely gone. Some people may need to get down a bit lower if that's their intention. But at least with clothing on, for sure, it'll be extremely flat, and you're not going to have any visible body fat protruding, unwanted excess body fat protruding, rather. Okay, so I mean, first step is really be crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to do performance, be crystal clear about what type of physical activity you're trying to get good at. So if it's like fishing with a kayak or something like that, then you want to be good at probably doing suitcase carries and kind of progressively overload that exercise. Initially start with an easier version of that, or just some kind of general core stability exercises. Once again, it's so hard for me to give you guys advice because you need to know the person's starting place. If they can't even balance, or for example, voluntarily suck in their belly button, then they need to be regressed to very simple core exercises and probably just movement hygiene in general before you progress them onto a little bit more complicated things like farmer's carries or suitcase carries, or even wood chop variations, which require a decent amount of coordination as well, or deadlifts, etc. But you want to be crystal clear about, like, what do you actually need your lower back to be doing? If you want to just be good at like deadlifts, then you need to develop your lower back in accordance with that. If you want to be good at kayaking and you have to carry that kayak on one arm, for example, while your partner is carrying it on the other arm, while you guys carry it into the ocean or whatever, then you want to be good at that kind of movement, okay? You want to be like very specific. Your training needs to be very specific to exactly what you're trying to accomplish, okay? Stay away from, if you want to get the most out of your activity, stay away from general fitness. And you want to be very razor sharp specific on what you're trying to accomplish. So the next, another step is like, some people want to have a healthy lower back. And usually what they mean by that is to have more resilience and not have any pain. Then that's going to require a separate approach as well, depending on the person's level of pain, how sensitized the tissue is, and what is causing their pain. Because low back pain, it's a very general umbrella term that could encompass like a myriad of things. So a lot of times with simple conversations, low back pain, if a person says they have low back pain, it's the same as a person saying, my car doesn't start. It's like, okay, sure, your car isn't starting, but what could it be? Are you out of gas? Or maybe the starter is broken, or maybe the ignition is broken, or maybe whatever. I don't know that much about cars, but it could be like a myriad of other things that are causing your car to not start properly. And it's the same thing with the lower back. So which brings us to our next step. Once you've determined your goal and your ambition, whether it's aesthetics or performance or health, or a combination of all three, for a lot of people that is a combination of all three, then you need to determine your current starting place. So how competent are you in movement? What does your posture look like? If you are in pain, how much pain are you in? And this is where a very good, thorough assessment comes in, helpful. So a lot of times, like a McGill low back assessment, like I took his course, I also hired him and Brian Carroll to help me along the journey of understanding low back pathologies. And a good low back assessment takes around 2 to 3 hours, if not more, if you're including lifestyle assessments as well and other assessments, because a lot of times people are coming in with a myriad of symptoms, like they might have low back pain, but they're also 50 pounds overweight, and they might also have gut issues and like a myriad of other issues that could all be indirectly or directly contributing to that low back pain. All of that has to be taken into consideration. And that takes at least the low back portion 2 to 3 hours. And then if you do all the other stuff, it could take another 2 to 3 hours as well to really get a thorough picture of what is going on with this individual, to be able to properly advise this person on what needs to be done. Because if you're not assessing properly, you're just guessing at that point. And good luck getting that kind of assessment from the majority of your local chiropractors or MDs, which you're never going to get. And that's just how it is. You're just going to come in there and they'll adjust you, or they'll ask you what's up with your low back, and they'll give you some low back pain. But very rarely, and I'm going to give you guys some practitioners you can seek out that would help you with that, but very rarely is someone going to spend 2 to 3 hours assessing you. When I say very rarely, I mean it almost never happens, especially with today's revolving door healthcare system of you just get in there, 5-minute chat with whoever it is, and then they shoot an answer your way and then get the hell out of my office, and really no follow-up, nothing. Maybe we'll take some scans, but not MRI scans, but not correlate those MRI scans with a mechanical in-person assessment to see what is actually causing this person's pain. Because the thing is with low back pain, especially if you're already in pain or have a history of pain or re-injuring your back frequently, low back pain can be a myriad of things. It's like, what could it be? Do you have a posterior lateral disc bulge to the left side or the right side, or an anterior disc bulge? Or, sometimes there is a thing called a Schmerl's node, probably pronounced that incorrectly. English is a second language here. That one's a tongue twister for me, but it's basically when you have a herniation that protrudes upward through the end plate of the disc. The disc has 2 end plates at the top, the superior and inferior, and it protrudes, for example, up in through the end plate, cracks the end plate, and a lot of times creates kind of like a little indent in the actual vertebral body, in the skeleton part of the spine. Okay, sometimes you have double maybe spondylolisthesis, or you have narrowing of the spinal canal as well. This is where a very thorough assessment comes in helpful. And a lot of times even taking an MRI scan although it is very helpful, is not enough. You need to match that MRI scan with a in-person detailed mechanical assessment. Because, for example, let's say a person, and this is very common, it's not even a rare situation, let's say a person has a posterior lateral disc bulge to the, like a 6 millimeter posterior lateral disc bulge to the left side of the L5S1 disc, but has also a posterior lateral disc bulge on the L2 and L3 to the right side, let's say 3 millimeters. Okay, so when you take the MRI, it might show that you have 2 disc herniations, and sometimes the doctor will go like, oh, you need to get surgery on both of these if they're causing debilitating pain. But if you follow it up with a mechanical assessment, you'll determine that, hey, it's just the L5 disc that is causing me pain, and although I do have a disc herniation or a bulge or a protrusion, whichever you want to call it, in the L2 and L3, that is actually not causing me any symptoms. So there's no point of getting surgery on that one yet, in my opinion. Okay, so that can kind of save you quite a bit, because surgery it's a risk, because once you go under the knife and the tissue is cut out, there's no putting that tissue back. And I even trained one spine surgeon quite a while back, and he always told me personally, like, hey, you know, if you have a back injury, don't get back surgery unless the pain is so bad that you're willing to kind of take a knife to your own back. Okay, so it's some wise words, I think, that I took into consideration from him, because a lot of times, quite frequently, people do have complications with back surgery, and they're worse off before. They're worse off after the surgery than they were before. Especially, there's no education. After the surgery, the person isn't educated on what actually caused their pain, isn't educated on good spine hygiene, how to lift properly, etc., etc. Just the surgery is done, and it's kind of like, imagine like a teenager that's driving a car, they get in a car accident, and they total the there, and then instead of teaching them, you know, how to drive properly, you just give them another car. It's kind of like how it works with surgery. If there isn't a follow-up education process on thoroughly educating the person what they did to cause that back injury and making sure that doesn't happen again. And these days, I would say there needs to be a tremendous amount of education, just health education in general, because you're getting 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically sick right now. So you're getting a person that's just very, like, just generally mentally and physically not doing well altogether. And all those variables indirectly will contribute to re-injury of the low back and stuff of that sort. Because if your sleeping is poor and you remain, you know, 50 plus pounds overweight, that's still going to cause a tremendous amount of compression and shear penalties on your back, even if you have the surgery. So the chances of getting re-injured is quite high. And also the chance of just not recovering properly is quite high as well. So a thorough mechanical Q&A assessment. So it'll always begin with talking to the individual and having that individual explain their past history with the pain and what quote unquote incident led to the back injury. But just know with back injuries, it's a lifetime of poor movement patterns that typically lead to the deterioration of the discs or the tissue around the discs or whichever is causing you pain. And there is usually one incident that happens that leads to actual severe pain, but just know that the degeneration of the disc has been a lifelong process of poor spine hygiene, combined with a lifetime of poor diet, probably a lifetime of obesity or being very overweight as well, which puts a lot of pressure on those discs, etc., etc. So that all needs to be taken into consideration, and that's why you need to do a thorough Q&A with clients. So typically I spend at least 3 hours assessing a client before I write out a program for them personally. Just the general rule, and then I do like another hour assessment about 3 to 4 months into the program. So it's about 4 hours total, and do weekly follow-ups and have objective measurements of how to actually progress the client from start to finish, etc., etc. These are all important parts of a healing journey because oftentimes the person is going to need that support, especially if they're currently in pain and stuff of that sort. So getting a thorough mechanical assessment is important. So you got the Q&A, then you follow up with a mechanical assessment just to match what they're saying with the symptoms and the movement patterns. If they have imaging, that'll be another imaging such as an MRI, for example, would be very helpful. Then you can match that all in one. A little bit of shortcomings with the MRI, for example, is sometimes the radiology report isn't that detailed. Some of them are good, but a lot of them are just very lax and lazy with the reporting. So what you see on there may not be actually the complete picture of what is going on with your spine. That's very important too. Another important thing to remember is when you are getting an MRI done, you are laying flat as those images are being taken. And sometimes, like for example, you could have a posterior lateral disc bulge when you flex the back, but when you're actually straight, that bulge, because it may be dynamic, can actually go back in, and when you take the MRI imaging, it actually doesn't show anything. So it gives you like a false negative, for example. Then you can see those images and you're like, oh, well, I don't have any pain because I don't see anything. Well, sure, because you're in an upright position and it happens not to be a pain trigger. But if you flexed and took the MRI, if you flexed especially for a prolonged period of time, the thing is with the disc, it's kind of, it's very liquid, it's soft substance, so it's very malleable and changes constantly throughout the day as well. In the morning, it typically starts very inflated, and then towards the end of the day, it kind of deflates quite a bit. And even your body positioning, which it refers to as passive tissue creep, changes the dynamics of the disc as well. So if you're sitting for prolonged periods of time, typically this puts a lot of compression on, especially the L5-S1 disc, and the material slowly starts protruding out, so it kind of slowly starts bulging out. And if you have kind of like an open fissure, then that nucleus pulposus material can start poking out into the nerve and causing pain. So it touches the nerve root, and depending on which nerve it touches, it causes pain either localized specifically in your lower back, or it could go down the back of your leg, or even the front of your leg if it's a little bit higher up in the spine, lower back as well. So all these little details are so important in the assessment process. And the sad truth is, almost nobody's going to go to this level of detail with you ever. And so here's some good resources if you guys have really troubled lower backs and don't want to waste your time. Some great resources if you find a very competent advanced level or master level, like McGill certified low back pathology expert. You can go to, I think, backfitpro.com. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've been on that site. And they have a tab there. I forgot exactly where it was, but you can click and they have a list of McGill certified instructors. Another great group of people you can check out, and I'm sure there are more than this, is like a Czech level 5 practitioner. Okay, level 5 is important. They will be likely to help you with your back as well quite a bit, and give you that thorough one-on-one time that you really need. Because low back pain, there's so many little details to consider. In fact, with any health challenge, there's so many little details to consider. This is why generalized health most always doesn't work. It really needs to be customized to the individual. I mean, that's so important. So those courses are great to take as well. At BackFit Pro, he has like an online course. You don't need to be like have any degrees in physical fitness or et cetera, et cetera. Anyone can take these courses, and I would highly recommend doing that. Okay, yes, it's going to cost you money, but guess what? You're spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on eating out and other non-essential expenses, no problem. And yes, you are. And I guarantee you, if you just spent that money on educating yourself on how to get out of your back pain, it'll be money better spent and actually provide a lot more value to your life. Some other great books here. So, Movement and Stability, Low Back Pain, awesome read here. Okay. There are 2 books by Polachek. I could only find one of them, but basically one great one is Scientific Core Conditioning. This is more probably a good resource like when you're out of pain. He also has one, Scientific Back Training, as well. I couldn't find that book, but this is a great read as well. If you're currently in pain, I couldn't find the other book, but I think it's called The Back Mechanic by Stuart McGill. I would recommend starting with that book. Once you're done with that, progress to this guy here. Okay? And reading this stuff isn't enough. You actually got to thoroughly apply it, all right? Ultimate Back Fitness and Performance is a great book. I read that a few times. Amazing read. And then after you finish that one, progress to this guy here, okay? There's a lot of overlap between Back Mechanic, Ultimate Back Fitness and Performance, and this book here, but this one's kind of a bit more of the advanced version. But nonetheless, I would highly, highly recommend that you read all of them and master all of that material. And afterwards, even if you need to hire someone, you'll have a much better eye of what a good practitioner looks like and what a good assessment looks like. So for example, a very bad assessment is, in my opinion, you walk into a chiropractic office, you tell them you have low back pain, but they don't determine what's actually causing your low back pain. Stenosis, posterior disc bulge, anterior disc bulge, spondylolisthesis. What is it? You know, who knows? They do a quick adjustment, they get you out of the office. So in my opinion, this is probably the worst of the worst type of service. Another example of a bad practitioner for lower back pain is you show up at your doctor's office, and once again, they skip this whole entire assessment process, which is pivotal. It's so important. And they just give you pain medication. Once again, in my opinion, terrible, terrible service. Even in the chiropractic office, sometimes a lot of people associate chiropractors with spine experts, which in a lot of cases, the furthest thing from the truth. And a lot of times you're not going to get great service at all there. The best you're going to get is an adjustment, which might give you an anesthesiologic effect of relief for like a minute or two, or maybe a day or two, and then your pain comes back, right? Because A, you've never been educated on what's actually causing your pain, and B, because the assessment hasn't been done, no one has determined what is the source of the pain, you know, and how your movement patterns and pain triggers are leading to that, etc., etc. So those things are important. Another good example of what I would see of if I walked into like a pain clinic and the only thing they're doing is giving me cortisone shots. That I would personally stay away from a million miles away. Not saying any of those things have a place in time, but once again, it all depends on your assessment, which is going to vary greatly. And in the chiropractic office, they'll do an adjustment. What if you already have too much laxity in the disc because of a disc protrusion? You need more stiffness. How's creating more laxity going to help you there, for example? Stuff of that sort. So an assessment is so critically important. And not only assessing the person's pain triggers, but also assessing the person's movement competency, and then also spending a lot of time assessing the person's how they move, not only in the gym, but outside of the gym. All of these things are so pivotally important. And unfortunately, even after listening to this podcast, most people are gonna go and get the wrong service anyways. I'm just hoping this actually gets through to at least one person, and they're able to go on a better journey with their back pain and stuff of that sort. So another thing to consider too is your posture as well. So your current starting place with your posture. So do you have an upper cross syndrome or a lower cross syndrome or a flat back? So for example, if you have a flat back and you have a posterior lateral disc bulge, that might make it more likely for that disc bulge, especially if it's dynamic, to protrude out and touch on that nerve. So maybe setting up some more natural lower doses in your back, as much as that person's genetics allows, could help you keep that disc more recited back into the annulus fibrosis, okay, the outer shell of the disc. It's been a little while since I spoke about back pathology. So little things like this are so important, okay? And unfortunately, you're just really honestly not going to get this in the majority of practitioners. But again, I gave you some resources, okay? I've taken all these classes, read all these books. These are great resources. I'm pretty sure there are other resources out there that I'm not mentioning. I don't know everything. But this is, if you just go along with these resources, you'll already be like ahead of the game of 99% of back pain patients, okay? Which are still just getting cortisone shots, getting adjustments, getting unnecessary surgeries, in my opinion, and wondering why they remain in low back pain. It's pretty crazy to me. And stuff of that sort. So another thing is too, now after you've done with the assessment and after you've determined your goals, etc., etc., it's time to start implementing everything. But you have to, there are a lot of levels to consider here. So I'm just going to list two just to, because I'm trying to keep these podcasts to an hour. If you're currently in pain, depending on the level of the pain, you have to first desensitize the tissue before you begin a rigorous exercise routine. A lot of people are like, I have back pain, I need a stronger back. No, it may be the case later on in the journey. What you mean is you need a more resilient back. But what happens is if you're currently in pain, first of all of this assessment work needs to be done to determine what is actually causing your pain. And then the oftentimes lengthy process of desensitizing the tissue begins, okay? This may take 3 months. This may take a year. Oftentimes if you have let's say a disc herniation, which is very common and happens oftentimes, it takes around 8 to 10 years to fully gristle over and the disc to fully heal over. So what happens is, initially you have the nucleus pulposus inside the middle of the disc. Over time, you have this thing called an annulus fibrosus. It's like an onion-like material around that kind of jelly-like liquid substance. And over time, those rings kind of break, they delineate. And then eventually you have a bulge, and then eventually you probably are going to have a disc herniation. So it's that nucleus material that protrudes out. And it's kind of like a jelly sandwich or a jelly donut. When you squeeze it out, it kind of protrudes out. And unfortunately, when it protrudes out, it hits the nerve, the associated nerve nearby, and causes low back pain. This could range from very mild to extremely severe and debilitating. Okay, and probably most cases somewhere in between. So it's not going to make sense for you to start working out especially with intensity, if the tissue is extremely sensitive, meaning like any one wrong move throws you into a week or two of back pain. If you're in that situation, everyone is different. This is why I recommend really seeking out a practitioner and getting a thorough assessment. What I would do is, first I would identify all my pain triggers, okay? Even the minor ones, and learn to alter them or get rid of them altogether if they're not necessary, okay? This could mean possibly the way I get up out of my bed in the morning, if it's a pain trigger, okay? Or the way I'm brushing my teeth in the morning as well. Instead of kind of hunching over a sink, maybe I need to brush my teeth standing up in the shower to keep my back straight. Because I found if my pain trigger, for example, is flexing the back, it doesn't make sense to keep flexing the back into that pain trigger. Because with low back pain, the area becomes more sensitive the more times you trigger it. So McGill gives a good example oftentimes of hitting your toe on the edge of a bed. You hit your toe once, it kind of hurts, but then it's sensitive. Let's say the next day you hit it again, it hurts quite a bit. And the third day, it's like unbearable. And that's the same exact thing with back pain. If you do not get rid of your pain triggers, and all of those assaults on the back, probably that happen all day, you're going to remain in back pain. So a lot of times people just have really poor couches as well. Or a lot of times sitting could be a pain trigger for you as well. And oftentimes if you continue to sit for long periods of time, you're going to continue to have low back pain and stuff of this sort, you know? So identifying the pain triggers, desensitizing the area, and then over time, building resilience. So first you got to get out of pain, then you have to slowly reintegrate exercise in a smart and intelligent way. And this is where you really do have to seek out an expert in this field to help you with that. From my experience, you're definitely not going to find it at your local PT office. In the bulk majority of cases, you're not going to find it in your local chiropractic office either. You're definitely not going to find it in your medical doctor's office. I hate to bash on these people, and some of them are amazing, but it's really far in between. So I'd recommend if they have any of those titles, ideally they would want also like these certifications, like to have gone through McGill's certification course, and possibly Paul Chek's like level 5 students would be great resources as well for you. So all these things are important to consider, and then I would recommend definitely educating yourself at the same time as well, reading all those books I mentioned, and stuff of that sort, okay? So let me see here. Yeah, and then remember, developing a resilient back and getting out of pain goes far above and beyond just what you do in the gym, although that's extremely important. So most people, they think they lift correctly, but trust me, they don't. So you need to really get good education on how to properly lift. Great resource, Brian Carroll. I worked with him for quite a long time, maybe 5 to 6 months or so. I hired him to learn about spine pathologies. He's a world record holder, back squat champion. So I think he squatted around 1,300 pounds after a serious back injury, extremely serious back injury. Okay, and he set the world record. So kind of seeking out individuals like this that have done all these courses and done all these due diligence and have sought after all these experts, etc., etc. That's going to be pivotal to not wasting your time and tremendous amount of money. And at the end of the day, with back issues, you got to be extremely patient, okay? You're looking at like 3-month intervals to see good noticeable progress, okay? And remember, just because you're out of pain doesn't mean the area is healed. It just means it's desensitized, but it could still be extremely sensitive. And this is where kind of getting on a good performance program and building that biological resilience over many years of training and being extremely patient in the process is going to really go the long way in helping preserve that back and actually build resilience over time instead of further depreciating the back, especially the discs of the lower back, etc., etc. So, guys, there's so much more to this. This is a huge passion topic of mine too. I've been studying it extensively since 2015. So what has it been? 8 years already, okay? So quite a bit. There's so much that goes into it, and I could kind of only roughly lay it out here, okay? But hopefully what I'm communicating here is there's so many intricate little details to consider. And these are so important to consider if you want a complete resolution of your symptoms. And it could only happen with these thorough assessments and with good follow through and with good education, etc., etc., especially teaching the person what they're doing to cause their low back pain, because it is what they're doing that is causing it. Like 99.9% of the time, even if you get situations of like a person that got in a car accident, that for sure may have not been their fault, but the reason they stay in back pain most likely is their fault. So they need to be re-educated on what they're doing that caused their pain. Remember, I forgot the Greek philosopher, but he mentioned if you treat the person that's causing the disease goes away. Such a powerful line, okay? Oftentimes, almost always actually, we are causing all our own problems. So you got to change the person that's causing those problems. And you got to be humble enough to say, I am causing my own problems. And also be humble enough to reach out for help when you need it and not think you know everything and stuff of that sort. So, okay, but let's say you've gotten through the back pain issue or you have a healthy back already. Then you can kind of start selecting and start exercising and start getting on a performance routine. So there's a lot that goes into this as well, like a very well-designed undulating periodization program would be great. Everyone's different in terms of what they need. but some great exercises for the low back that help integrate the low back into the rest of your movement, because you guys have to remember the low back, the quadratus lumborum, doesn't function individually, right? It's not like a muscle that just works on its own. It works in tandem with a myriad of different muscles around your core. So you got the rectus abdominis, the internal external oblique, the TVA, the multifidi, you got the quadratus lumborum, the psoas. You guys have to also remember that your lats and also your glutes and your hips in general act to stabilize your lower back as well. So oftentimes when you're lifting, and we'll cover this as the last step, you have to really learn to get these muscles to work as a unit, as a team, all at once and firing all in the right intensities to really help stabilize your back and create that strong back. But at the same time, you can create that aesthetically appealing back as well. So there are a lot of exercises you can do. Some great ones that are easy to implement are like farmer's carries. Again, it's all task specific. What are you trying to accomplish? I don't know what you're trying to accomplish personally, so it's up to you to decide. These are just some ideas that I would be looking at. Farmer's carries, suitcase carries are great. And there are so many variations of suitcase carries too. So one arm, you can carry it above your arm. I don't know exactly what that one's called. But these are both variations. Stir the pots is a great way to integrate the entire core and the glutes into a movement without actually creating flexion in your back. Cable wood chop variations. I mean, there are like a myriad of variations there. You can do with cables, bands, goblet lower back extensions, standing, kneeling. Stability ball crunch is one that I like as well. Also, where you can get like full extension and get enough flexion, but without flexing your actual lower back. The ab wheel or ab roller is a great choice as well. All these require cueing, and you got to know where your starting place is as well. Dead bugs are a great kind of beginner exercise people can do also, and stuff of this sort. But again, it really depends on where you are. If you can't even activate your core, obviously all of these things would be too tough for you to do. So you have to regress way more to more elementary exercises to learn how to engage your core first, and then learn how to integrate into proper movement patterns based on your goals. And the fourth thing is, once again, core bracing. I think this is so important, especially if you are doing like deadlifts and back squats and stuff of that sort. This is pivotal for back injury prevention and just for performance. So what I mean by core bracing is kind of what I mentioned before. All of those muscles that I talked about that are surrounding your core, even your lats and your glutes, for example, your hips, they're all working together to stabilize your spine. So you have to really learn to integrate all of them and see them all as one single immovable muscle, right? During a specific movement that's creating anti-movement, that's creating stability in the spine, right? There are a lot of videos online. You can check this out. A lot of times you just need, once again, really good coaching to be able to do this. It just really does help to have an outside perspective looking at you and kind of giving you some input on how to do that, etc., etc. So I kind of wanted to mention another thing too, but I totally forgot what I wanted to mention. Core bracing. But I think that covers like pretty solid perspective on what you would need to do to properly train your low back, depending on which level of your journey you're on. If you're in pain or not in pain, and if you're in pain, how to progress out of pain and then into performance, or if you're not in pain, how to progress through the different levels of performance and develop biological resilience over time. So the back actually gets stronger and it's able to actually do the movements you want for your specific goals and stuff of that sort. So, okay. So I hope that was helpful. It was good to see you guys. Timothy, Rayner, I saw a bunch of people came in. Christian, Oscar, Bob, Leonard, Kevin is here too. Pat, Renee, Hector, good to see you guys. James, good to see you as well. So unless you guys have any questions, oops, kind of missed Vince, good to see you as well. Unless you guys have any questions, just let me know. David, he said, my passion for kayak fishing. I'm glad I don't have symptoms with my back, Vince mentioned. Bob said, hey, Eugene, stir the pots is like torture for me. Yeah, that exercise is like a love and hate relationship for me too. I like the stability ball ab crunch personally with like the dumbbell or like a plate across your chest. Stir the pots are great too. Leg lunges will likely never be my favorite list. That's okay, David. That's why we're going to include it every workout from now on, and you'll learn to have it be your favorite. Joking though, of course. So, yeah, I mean, Vince, it's good to see you. David, I'll see you during the week. And you guys have a good weekend, okay? But remember, if you're struggling from low back pain, I gave you some amazing resources that I've compiled over 8 years of trial and error and spending God knows how many thousands of dollars learning about this stuff into like a free video, okay? So, of course, it's going to take work on your part to do these things, but at least I gave you a blueprint of where to seek the right answers if you are in back pain, and where to seek the right answers if you want to optimize your low back aesthetics or performance or whatever, okay? So you don't have to spend a lot of your time getting a lot of these cracks, cortisone injections, etc., which may have a place in time in some situations, but from my observation, it's very rare. So, okay, you guys, great to see you. Oscar, thank you. It's been a long time since I did a video on low back pathology, so it's a good refresher for me too. All right, guys, thank you. Have a good one.